Welcome, everyone, to the Mapped Out Podcast. I am your host, Michael Patterson, along with my buddy, Michael Szymanski. Let's get this started, baby. Okay, this is episode number 9. But before we dive in, we ask a quick favor from all of you all. Please, if you like the show, share it, tell your friends, tell your dog. We don't really care. Just share the show because it helps us grow. So without further ado, Michael, how are you doing today?
I'm revitalized.
Revitalized. You have a rough weekend?
Yes.
Yeah, we've all been there. So what are we talking about today?
We're talking about the benefits of fasting.
Okay.
And fasting in general.
Okay. So as we dive in, let's break down. I think before we talk about the benefits, you want to talk about fasting and some elements that go into how we eat, anything around that topic. Dive us into the details.
Okay. Fasting is usually thought of as restricting your time of eating to a certain window. That could be 10 hours to 2 hours or any in between.
Okay.
So this could include keeping your calorie intake the same or limiting it by having a calorie deficit. Yeah, so that's usually the parameters of fasting. This could also include, I might have to mention, extended fasts, such as 24-hour, 48-hour, 72-hour, over a month day fasts with water. Lots of fasts. lots of fasts are possible.
It doesn't happen very fast, you know?
Yeah. It's
Okay,
some can be painful, but
yeah.
Point is, it involves restricting eating and intake of calories, usually within a period of time, whether that is in between days or within the hours of the day.
Okay. And so with that restriction, what are some of the benefits that we want to have, or what are some of the bodily functions that we want to try to improve with fasting?
So one of the first ones would be blood glucose levels. So glucose is derived from sugars or via byproducts of metabolism of other macronutrients such as fats and protein, because those can be transferred into glucose molecules as well through gluconeogenesis pathways, which just means making new glucose. Genesis. Anyway, and then basically when we don't eat, it's usually found that we have low blood glucose because when we eat, our body breaks down nutrients and creates glucose as energy source. So when we're fasting, we have low blood glucose. We also have low insulin levels because insulin binds molecules and stores them in our cells. So if there's no glucose, there's no need for insulin at that time. And the blood glucose level is steady. It doesn't fluctuate as much as if we were in a fed state. And then a byproduct of that process is that we might have better insulin sensitivity. And that means that when glucose is introduced in our system, then that insulin will better recognize that glucose and bind it.
Okay.
Versus insulin resistance, which is type 2 diabetes.
So I'm going to try to make this, dumb it down a little bit. So correct me if I'm wrong. Fasting, the reason why it's important, the why people do it, is that it basically deregulates the body's functions and it slows it down in a sense of it's not working to break down all these calories, break down all the nutrients, that it's able to go into more of a restive state, which makes us more alert because we aren't producing insulin and we aren't getting that spike where, you know, that midday nap wants to come in. And is there anything else that I'm missing?
Yeah, I would say it regulates it, but down regulates it.
Okay.
I think
gotcha.
down regulate is the proper verbiage.
See, this is why I'm learning.
Yeah. But I mean, same
know.
difference. But yeah, you're right. What you said is right.
Okay, and
also I have to add that like there's other like aspects to it, like psychological stuff, like a challenge, or like it puts you in a meditative state, or like you like being more focused or mentally sharp, because we know like high glucose levels are correlated with insulin spikes, and that might cause sleepiness, and then you're not as sharp. So like other reasons like that too that aren't purely metabolic in nature.
Yeah, just so once we step outside of that metabolic state, right? What are some of these features? I know we talked about before, like the circadian rhythm and sleep. Can we dive into the impacts of that in terms of fasting?
Mm-hmm.
And we'll just start from there, and we'll just kind of go on.
Yeah, sure. So we mentioned in a previous episode about circadian rhythms, and specifically the sleep-wake cycle. And previously it was thought that the only cells that did this were brain cells, specifically those found in the supraoptic nucleus, where the suprachiasmatic nucleus, where the processes of sleep are regulated. However, people hypothesized that circadian rhythms were found in every type of cell in our body. This included like stomach cells, intestine cells, kidneys cells, liver cells, and pancreas cells. And I just list those because those are digestive cell types.
As we're talking about fasting.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And because of this, people hypothesized that, since a circadian rhythm is a rhythm and not a steady state, well, it is a steady state by definition, but it's a rhythm. It's a sine wave, if you might say. People know what that looks like. Up and down, basically. So, since it's a rhythm, it experiences episodes of rest, and then episodes of it being used.
Yep.
For lack of better terms. So, this means, by hypothesis, that at a few wakeful hours of the day, we have an opportunity to eat, and then our body must assimilate those nutrients and then store them. So, that also means that those other hours of the day, if it is analogous to the circadian rhythm in the brain, that the other hours of that period of nutrient assimilation, and then what occurs after that is regeneration, possibly, because we know that when we wake up in the middle of the night, we're not as good with our brain doing stuff as if we were fully rested.
And I think we oftentimes very easily able to associate the circadian rhythm with our brain, right? And when we feel groggy and tired, but we oftentimes don't look at it from a whole body perspective, especially from our gut health and nutrient breakdown. And so what you're saying is it's really important that we look at the body as a whole, in particular our gut, on this same rhythm cycle, and that can really help us improve our performance.
Yes. So I wanted to highlight one experiment that I found, and it's from Sachin Panda. He's from UC San Diego. And this is a pretty big study. He's a very key researcher in this subject of fasting and time-restricted eating.
Okay.
So the experiment consisted of a control of calories and food conditions between two groups of mice. So this means that the calories are kept the same. So let's just say 2,000, for instance. Like they're not fluctuating calories, not deficit or anything.
Yep.
And then the food conditions are the same, so they're eating the same stuff. So one group was given food at any time, so they could eat whenever they wanted, and another group was fixed to an 8 to 10 hour window. Okay. So the results after 18 weeks following the two groups was that the mice that could eat any time, got morbidly obese, had liver disease, heart disease, and other comorbidities.
What about the fasting
group?
group?
The group that had the same amount of calories and food types were completely protected from all these diseases. So this illustrates that the food may not be the problem, but the time window of eating may be the problem. So this provides a thesis that the digestive process is taxing and hard on the whole system, and therefore we should not be eating all the time because that may provide the avenue for disease.
And that's actually really interesting study because, once again, I'm taking this to other muscle groups, right? Because a lot of times when we think about eating, we let our brains kind of just dictate when we eat, right? Or impulses. And we just say, okay, who cares that it's, I'm going to bed, so I just want that midnight snack, or, I'm hungry right now, so I'm just going to eat a snack here and there. It's really interesting because if we were to apply that to working out, right? And we were to say, hey, we're going to go work out, and then an hour later, hey, you know what? I'm just feeling like a good workout today. And then you work out and you work out. You would see your muscles not develop properly, or you would see breakdowns. And I think this is analogous to the gut health, right? And about your body needs that break period to recuperate, to, how do we say?
Rejuvenate.
Hey. Mr. Vocabulary Man over there. But it is interesting, and it's something good to take away from that study.
Yeah, and I have an illustration that I drew up, and
Wow.
it's I know, right? So when digesting food, your body releases chemicals and digestive enzymes, and it's kind of analogous to cooking.
Okay. Chef
So-
Szymanski?
Yeah, so you cook food, okay, and then
Um,
what do you do after you cook the food and you eat it? What do you have to do?
You got to wash out those plates. You
Yeah,
got to put
that's
everything
right.
away.
That's right. In the same fashion, 7 to 10% of your gut cells are damaged by the digestive process and need to be repaired every night. So that means it is the process of digestive process is harmful in a way because 7 to 10 cells are damaged, which means that there needs to be a period of rejuvenation. And
Very-
another way to look at this is like there's lots of things our body's digesting that it doesn't need, that we don't need,
Mm-hmm.
like food colorings, don't need that. Spices,
Externalities.
spices, natural plant defense chemicals, like undigestible like material like fiber, excess fiber, like fillers, like if you look on like any processed treat.
Go look
Like
on a
all
bologna.
those
on
like giant organic chemistry molecules with like huge names. Like we don't have the enzymes that complex to break down some of those molecules, So yeah, stuff like that. They all damage our cells
Mm-hmm.
because as we evolved, we didn't evolve with these chemicals. These chemicals evolved with our technology.
Yeah,
So,
so
yeah.
our body hasn't been able to keep up, and thus it's kind of like I know we're using a lot of analogies,
Yeah.
but it's like using a drill bit, right? At some point you need to change it out because it's not going to work.
Mhm.
It's worn out from, being used so many times.
And that drill bit took millions of years to change out.
Yeah.
So we expect it to change within 50 years.
Hey, that's the way the human brain works. Okay. So now that we understand kind of we have plenty of analogies to figure out what's happening. Where do we go next? What's the next part of this equation of fasting?
So I think fasting blood glucose is the next avenue.
Okay.
Because this is the major key marker that I look at and others look at when measuring levels of mortality. And mortality, that means just ability of death.
Okay.
So higher mortality means higher chance of death. Yeah. Most people know that, I think.
That's Big 10-4.
Yeah. So another experiment that I found was fasting blood glucose as a predictor of mortality from Cell Metabolism, which is a cell press journal, which is a very good journal. And they found that humans with higher blood glucose are associated with having higher mortalities.
And is this because of the body? Is this like bodily, basically, breakdowns or like conditions that develop because of high glucose?
Yeah, conditions
Okay.
that develop because of high glucose, and specifically high fasting blood glucose.
Okay.
Because as we talked before, glucagon is a chemical that will cleave glycogen from the liver. Glycogen is a stored form of glucose, and that will raise levels of blood glucose when necessary when blood glucose is low in the blood.
Gotcha.
However, when it's high in the blood, when we're in a fasted state, that's abnormal most of the time because it's not supposed to happen unless you've had a very, very large meal. And another reason for this could be insulin resistance, meaning the insulin molecule itself is not picking up the glucose and storing it. And this is what we see in people with type 2 diabetes, is the insulin molecule, for some reason, is in its pathway of storing and recognizing the glucose molecule. It doesn't recognize it and doesn't store it. So because of that, it's a pathology. And that's one way why I implement fasting and other people implement fasting is because it reverses, or it may reverse, can't say it does. It may reverse, even though it kind of has, it may reverse type 2 diabetes and specifically insulin resistance by making those molecules more receptive to blood glucose in the blood.
And then, so we're talking a lot about how digestive behaviors, basically the act of digesting is pretty bad, right? And although you need to digest food because that's what you need to do.
Yeah.
Where is that, I don't want to say balance, but where is some of that structure to know, hey, I need to take a break. Hey, I need to eat a lot. How do you go about that as far as sourcing, et cetera?
Well, first of all, if anyone's interested, there is tons of information, but not good information, as with everything.
Yes.
But there's, I would look at Sachin Panda's work because obviously he's quoted as the person who popularized the evidence for this type of eating. And then Ori Hofmeckler is the author of the Warrior Diet. He was an ex-Israeli Special Forces member, and he created the Warrior Diet, which is a 20 to 4 fasting period to eating. Fasting period to eating window. So it's 20 hours fasted to 4 hours eating. He's kind of the guy who implemented and popularized intermittent fasting, the wording. But you can look up templates online pretty much for all of this stuff, and there's quality sources, particularly medical doctors and PhDs who focus on this type of work. So yeah, I follow the 2040. Sorry, I follow the 24, 20-4, somebody say, fasting block.
And then how do you tell, because it's really good to have someone who goes out there and says, I want to go find this information. How do you determine then from the information that you have, okay, is this a good thing to follow? Is this a bad thing to follow? Because if someone says, I fast for 3 hours, it's like, well, I think that's just a break between meals.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
What suggestions do you have for that?
I would look at first. I would look at plans that you think you could adhere to or try.
Okay.
And then look at experimental evidence. Has this been tested on mice and humans, and see the results, just to prove that to show that it works somewhat, and then look at anecdotal evidence. So people, like what their opinions are on it, like how it's worked for them. See if there's a large group that have approved of it, and that will generally tell you that it's safe if people aren't dying from it. And then the best experiment is yourself, even though it could be dangerous at times. But I live on the edge, so
we're not suggesting that you live on the edge, or we are not responsible for said injuries happening from being on the edge.
So the best experiment is yourself. So try it out and see what happens. If you feel good, if you feel bad, do what follows that.
Okay. So now that we've outlined kind of why we want to do it, some of the impacts of it, where to get your information from, where do we go next? Or what's the next step along our fasting journey?
Okay. Well, I think there would be some mistakes,
Okay.
obviously, that I've come along through the community that I follow and my own experiences.
Sure.
So first mistake is not eating enough in the window. Most people find that most people might get micronutrient or macronutrient deprived in the short term and long term and short term respectively, because they're not eating enough in that time window. So you need to hit your calorie mark, or at least to satiation or feeling full.
Mm-hmm.
That's because it's the only time that you're gonna be able to eat, and it's the fuel that your body's gonna be working off of while you're fasting.
Yeah, to get to that next checkpoint of when you can eat again and start to intake.
Yeah. And then another mistake would be fasting too much. So it's always good to have like a break, I think. So I'll have like 1 day out of the week, or 2 days out of the week, usually 1 day out of the week, where I just follow, like I'll eat at like 12 instead of 4. So like I'll break into like an 8-hour window instead. And that's just to make sure that my systems are working well. So I can see that there's a good insulin response in a long-term fashion, because I'm only used to a short-term, so I can't really notice. Like, I can notice that it's I guess it's if it's in a long-term fashion, I just want to make sure that my energy levels aren't crashing, just to show that the molecule is working well, insulin. And also just to, keep you mentally sane, I think, So yeah, just for like other psychological purposes and like society and stuff, like staying sane within your community, like eating with your friends and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think especially us being college guys, there's a lot of, within that fasting window, a lot of pressures, right, to eat. Personally, do I fast? No, I do not. I am on a intake whenever you can type of plan. But as far as making sure that you're balancing the fasting along with enjoying life still too, because I think one interesting note that I was reading about. So I'm reading Jobs' book, Steve Jobs, and I think it's called Jobs, the book.
Yeah, I think so.
So he was huge on fasting, but he took it to an extreme of only eating like apples and carrots, right? And this actually came into play. I'm getting towards the end of it right now, where his health deteriorated immensely because he was so focused on fasting that he forgot about the macronutrients that your body actually needs to function. And that has long-term effects. And so balancing I need to fast because this helps me now, and making sure that you're still getting nutrients and still getting the long-term benefits of eating, you have to watch that.
Mm-hmm. And that's probably why we saw endocrinology-specific cancer arise in his case, that being pancreatic cancer.
Yep.
As the pancreas is involved in endocrinology and the process of metabolism. So could be derived why.
And there's other factors.
Yeah,
too.
obviously. Like genetics too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I follow 20 hours fasting, 4 hours feeding every single day, and I usually eat at 4 p.m. or 5 p.m. I go to bed at 9 or so, 9 or 8:30, and
okay,
and I pack in all my calories at that moment, and I focus on eating a lot of protein. That's because it's thermic, but also because I'm trying to starve off any gluconeogenesis occurring via breaking down muscle, and I'm trying to focus on retaining muscle and using fat sources for gluconeogenesis if necessary, but mainly focusing also on intaking enough carbohydrates to replenish my glycogen, so then my energy comes from derived from glycogen stores in my liver. So yeah, keeping that in in line, and also eating 2 meals. So I spread it like, okay, I eat my first one at like 5. And,
Okay.
and then I'll eat it for like, 20 minutes, 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And then I'll wait like, 15 minutes, and I'm like, okay, go. And then I eat another one.
It's like a buffet.
Yeah, and then I eat another one, and then I try to spread it out, like variety of stuff, so like I have fun with it too.
So do you ever find that you are craving certain foods more? For example, I have a feeling, I've never done a fast, but I have a feeling that you have less cravings of really sugary, carbohydrate-filled crap and more lean proteins, lean foods, healthier foods for you. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, I eat rice as my primary carbohydrate source,
Okay.
and that's it.
White rice or brown rice?
White,
Okay.
and some bananas too, and
Delicious.
That's it. So that, and then I have chicken, bison, salmon, and then and, like butter, like all this stuff, and like and like these are all like very healthy foods.
Uh-huh.
So and when I'm fasting, there's an adaptation period, obviously. So like it took like a week to get used to it,
Mm-hmm.
but I am not hungry at all during the fasting period. Zero, nothing.
So your body adapts to it?
Yeah, like nothing.
Interesting.
And I have perfect, like, crap you not, perfect,
Perfect, everyone.
perfect clarity. Like no sleepiness, always on. Like I can, like no brain fog, nothing. Like that's why I practice it specifically, because whenever I have carbohydrates, I can't like work at all. Like it just shuts off, because the process of breaking down those carbs just like
It
brain
does.
fogs my brain hard.
So speaking to that, my own personal experience, I have been, and you can talk to my parents, it's pretty funny. I've crashed at like 11 because I go to school, right? I go to my first class, and then I intake from the dining hall a wonderful breakfast that is definitely carbohydrate heavy. And we were laughing about this because dorm food is naturally just unhealthy. And so I have a big breakfast because for me it's about just intaking enough calories to support my physical activity and to hopefully build. I'll have a big breakfast and I will crash. And I'll be in my room, it's kind of quiet, and I'm in a single. So I'm like, wow, I'll just take a little nap here. Next thing you know, you wake up and you're rushing to class, and then I've noticed that if I don't eat, if I skip breakfast, I actually feel better about getting to that second class and that third class because I don't have the massive drop that I saw when I was eating a big breakfast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's just again that's keeping your blood glucose like level.
Mm-hmm.
That's just what it pretty much is. And I have to say that I do use like black coffee in the morning, and that's just because like I like the ritual of making my coffee. Like it's just fun for me.
Wait,
so,
do you have one of those fancy presses and everything, or are you just a
I
Keurig
use a
click?
French press. So
there
it's
we
like,
go.
It's like a fun like wake me up process that I do. But I use that. But that's just more for enjoyment of the morning and stuff. And then I guess kind of staving off hunger, but I'm never hungry in the morning,
Mm-hmm.
so it's whatever. And the other metrics I can say, just to stave off the critics, is like I've gained muscle mass on this. And
So he's gotten swole.
And I have kept a very lean body mass index. So obviously the requirement of intaking protein 5 times a day and like spread out is not as clean cut as everyone makes it out to be, I think.
And I think that's dependent on the person too. Sometimes bodies just may not adapt to.
Yeah.
certain-
I agree.
Yeah. Along with that little tidbit of information there, as far as when you are within the eating window, are you primarily eating whole food sources or are you supplementing a lot? So like protein powders, I know you're not doing this, but mass builders, other powders that when you mix them up in a water bottle, people claim will just be sufficient.
Yeah, I use protein powder.
Okay.
And that's just to hit a protein goal.
Mm-hmm.
But mainly I'm eating, like 2 chicken breasts, like 2 bison burgers, like a salmon fillet, like.
Gotcha.
And it's not all like, this is just examples, but but like I'm eating a large amount. So yeah, that's why like I can hit the numbers, I guess. But yeah, for your answer, I do use some supplements. Yes.
Okay. So as far as eating, I think we've covered that pretty well. Is there what's the next step, or what other parts of fasting haven't we dove into yet?
I guess we could like look at like autophagy.
Let's do it. I don't even know what that is, but
Yeah.
let's do it.
So
I do like that, autophagy.
So it's a very like debated topic.
That's what we like.
So I'll just like present it. I don't have much experiments or evidence to back anything up. But I've learned a lot about it, so I'll just say what I know. Autophagy is basically the body's process of naturally rebuilding cells from damaged or dying cells. So autophagy is just when phagocytes or the trash men of the body will eat or digest dying or damaged cells, and then use that energy to create new ones or provide the means for other cells to thrive.
Okay.
So basically, when you're fasting, it is said that autophagy is higher. This means that damaged cells are excised and that new cells are given more energy and metabolites, and new cells are possibly created. So that's one benefit of fasting. Basically, that's super simple terms. But it's highly debated because the levels of autophagy between studies have varied, but it's evident that something happens, and obviously as scientists we don't know everything, so the answer is probably yes, but again the answer includes probably because we don't know.
And I think that's the beautiful thing about as we learn more about the body, we start to realize how much we don't know and how much things can change, and that's the beauty of it. As far as a recap.
Fasted
we have
training.
Let's do it.
Let's
dive into it.
Yeah, because another thing people may say is, well, I need like to eat before training, or like I feel like dead if I don't eat.
Mm-hmm.
I used to be the same way, and obviously I've been doing this for 2 years now of fasted training, specifically not the diet, but the fasted training I've been doing, and I adapted to it, and I noticed that I didn't need a pre-meal. And that was because evidence has shown that the levels of glycogen, cleaved into glucose and then used as energy, aka glycogen depleted, is the same whether you had a meal before a workout or you had a fasted workout. Meaning that you don't need to have a pre-meal because the glycogen is already maxed out, more or less. And
it adds no benefit.
So that's the basis for why I believe in fasted training also. And at least in specific cases in powerlifting where you might need to blow up so that you're more damage resistant, carrying heavier loads, or like a bodybuilding competition where you need to blow up. That makes sense. But in fasted training, I think that's pretty clear cut, at least now, that it's just up to preference. If you want a meal beforehand or not.
And also, so interesting note, I believe I want to say Spartans almost, where they had a little saying that you go to war hungry, because it makes you a little more aggressive. That was their philosophy of it, but it's really interesting to see how that's translated into modern times.
Yeah, and like any animal that's a predator in the wild, they hunt
hungry,
and then they eat after their accomplishment.
Yeah, and then they go take a nap.
Yeah,
and they enjoy life.
It's like, hey, it's biologically consistent.
Yeah.
Predators, man.
Man, that just reminds me. It is pretty funny how when it comes to science, a lot of the stuff, there's these really complex terms. There's these really overarching kind of themes.
Yeah.
And then
Spelling word contest.
no
Type
kidding.
of stuff.
And then all you got to do is just go turn on nature documentary, and a lot of the stuff is still there. Like,
Yeah.
it makes sense in real life.
Yeah. That's the issue that people obviously don't
Little
always pick up
overcomplex.
on, is that, you don't always have to complicate things. And then if you do complicate things, you have to uncomplicate them and simplify them to explain to the public.
Completely. And that's what I hope we do here for you all.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what? We are. I think we do a decent job at that.
Yeah.
So anyway, what do we have? Anything else? Well, awesome.
Yeah, I think that's
Can
good.
you give us a good
introduction.
recap?
Yeah, sure. Not only your brain runs on a circadian rhythm, your organs do too. So you might want to reconsider your time window for eating. Monitor your blood glucose, because that can lead to higher rates of mortality if unchecked. Look at intermittent fasting and consolidate your sources and come to solid conclusions before trying. Autophagy may work. and remember the mistakes about fasting and try to avoid them.
Awesome. That was a great recap.
Thanks.
Guys, if you love the show, please share, tell everyone. We really appreciate it. This was episode 9 on fasting. Thank you all. Have a great one.